We're talking crime, something that is affecting South Africans on a very deep level in our country.
SAPS answers to the National Minister and the National Commissioner only.
And unfortunately, you have politicians that abuse the fact that many people in public don't know this.
SAPS is in a very difficult situation, and that comes from years of resource starvation, surrounded by a criminal justice system which is frail and creaking, that collectively means that you have a complete failure to achieve convictions.
The ANC single-handedly destroyed the South African Police Service.
There's a police station in Bonteheuwel. They close their gates at 8 o'clock. That police station is forever closed.
Do you think there's a sense of perhaps sabotage? We're talking crime, something that is affecting South Africans on a very deep level in our country. But I just want to introduce our guests. We're joined by Ian Cameron, Member of Parliament and also the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Police. We're also joined by JP Smith, the MMC of Safety and Security in the City of Cape Town. And we're also joined by Elizabeth October, Member of the Neighbourhood Watch. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have a very difficult conversation that we need to have, but I think it's primed at the right time with what has been happening in our country. We know that crime is something that we all can't escape in this country. Many South Africans fear for their safety, fear for their lives. I mean, just walking out of your home these days, you don't know if you'll come back. So across the country, people are really dealing with something that is really affecting them. I mean, Ian, you had something just not so long ago that happened, something quite heavy.
Yeah, so it's just over a month ago that we were attacked in Philippi East in the Cape Flats, and it's a long story, and I think we can touch on it later. The point is just that everyone is exposed to it. And it feels to me like, especially over the last few months, it feels like everyone is bearing a heavier burden when it comes to crime. You speak to more and more people that refuse to go anywhere at night. More and more people feel fearful. And when you speak to police members as well, they also tell you that there's this constant feeling of escalation with violence. So it is, we're not in a good space. And we're not seeing convictions. And I know we're going to touch on the detail later, but the point is just that I think so many people have become absolute career operators as criminals that they've perfected it in their space. And we really have a lot of very difficult work ahead of us.
And you know, Elizabeth, just to bring you in as well, I mean, you're part of the Neighbourhood Watch.
Yes, sir.
And, you know, we're talking about crime and we're talking about the effect on just South Africans. I mean, you could maybe just share some of your experiences.
Crime in our community it's so bad. We as a Neighbourhood Watch try to minimize our patrols, our imbizos, safety for the kids, and we're trying to escalate to get rid of crime in our community.
Yeah, JP, I mean, you as someone who's also been in this sector for such a long time, you know, one doesn't want to say what is your interest, because I think whether we're interested or not interested, crime is coming for us and for South Africans in general. But as someone who's been in this sector for such a long time, what is your feeling on what's happening in the country right now?
I think SAPS is in a very difficult situation. Despite the fact that there are many really good people in SAPS who are trying very hard to make it work, who are making significant personal sacrifices to keep it together, who are spending of their own money, working unpaid overtime, making extra effort, taking big risks. The organization as a whole is in a very difficult space. And that comes from years of resource starvation, the systematic attrition of staff numbers. The figures the provincial government in the Western Cape got recently shows that we've atrophied another 2,000 staff. So yes, we'll see a launch of 1,000 members on a parade somewhere, but in the background during that same time, we're losing 1,500. You have a critical lack of modernization. When the National Development Plan was launched in 2012, it had a chapter on policing in one of the parts of that policing chapter had a whole section around modernization and the need to ensure that the police worked with the best possible equipment, internal as well as detection technologies, things like CCTV, drones, everything else. Mostly that has not happened. SAPS sit with very antiquated systems, too many deployees in critical positions at senior levels whose credentials are essentially political instead of being technical, surrounded by a criminal justice system which is frail and creaking in many ways. That collectively means that you have a complete failure to achieve convictions on everything that matters: sexual offences, murder, gang violence, just over a 2% conviction rate. Even for the firearms, the stats, Jordan Hill-Lewis and I recently released a 4.7% conviction rate for people we catch red-handed with an illegal firearm. And what then happens is what the point that Ian makes correctly, is that your criminals become accomplished, skilled, and veterans at the business they do, and they become a very big risk to communities. So this is difficult. And for the city, it means that even now when we've launched 810 extra Metro Police officers, we pour in a cup of water, but at the same time we watch SAPS scoop out, or national government scoop out a bucket of water in the National Police Service. So we're constantly shrinking. It's not making it easy for us. And I almost feel like we're being purposefully set up for failure because the level of mismanagement is so intense.
Elizabeth, I mean, you're someone who's in the neighborhood watch,
Yes.
and I suppose there's a lot of interface that happens between the neighborhood watch together with the local SAPS police station in your community. And so what is that like? And can you maybe just give us an experience of yours?
We are patrolling like in the evenings, and when we see illegal activities, we phone SAPS. We have a direct line to the sector commander of Sector 1. We call it Sector 1. You know, we have a Sector 1 and a Sector 2. And you know what is the bad part of it? The incident that happened, SAPS van will come an hour later. Then everything is quiet. And at the end of this, put our, as neighborhood watchers, also at risk. And when you go to, there's a police station in Bonteheuwel, that's a satellite, that police station is forever closed. They close their gates at 8 o'clock. And the satellite's supposed to be a 24/7 operation. When the community comes there to put their complaints in, they refer them to Bishop Lathers. They need to report there. So why is a satellite in Bonteheuwel where they don't serve a purpose for the community? That is actually a very big concern for us as neighborhood watchers in Bonteheuwel area.
Well, and I think that's an interesting point. I mean, just quite recently, we've seen on the news, some gang violence. And I think when people always hear this on the news, whether it's in Gauteng or the Western Cape, people automatically think that, well, it's the Western Cape. The Western Cape is violent. The Western Cape government is failing. Who actually is the responsibility or the competency of police? Because I think that's also very confusing for people who are sitting at home and saying, well, how can we say that the DA is doing all that it's doing, lead officers, etc., but yet the crime is still increasing? Is police a competency of provinces, provincial government? What is the competency of police? I think just to clarify what you're also saying, Elizabeth, because I think many of us are very confused about it.
Yeah, so firstly, I would like to say that the ANC single-handedly destroyed the South African Police Service. So I'm very, and we should say it unapologetically. We've come to a point now where the South African Police Service, let's use the Hawks as an example. I think they're running at a 47% capacity at the moment. And year after year after year, there's asked for resources. People insist on getting better technology. Just a side note quickly, the other day I had to do a statement at the Hawks in Bellville, and they had to use voice notes from my phone, and I refused to let them download my phone for logical reasons. And then they said, I can send the voice note, but they'd have to go and get a CD to put the voice note on the CD. Now, when last in your life did you go and
use a CD.
Write a CD?
Whoa.
You know what I mean? So, and that's the Hawks. They're meant to be the elite crime fighting unit. And the reason why I started with a political answer is that it falls under national government. And despite and JP will elaborate far more than I can about it, but just in terms of the devolution argument, legislation already allows for that to actually be decentralized and for local and provincial government to play more of a role. But in short, it's a national government competency. At most, on a provincial and even a local level, we can do oversight, and there are bodies and representatives that can do oversight. But we do a lot of oversight, and despite that, you can't turn the ship quickly enough to stop the decline. Remember, if you look at the Western Cape, I think last week alone, just in Kraaifontein, there were 14 murders. Just in Kraaifontein. That's excluding the rest of the Cape Flats. And even though the reaction to most of the crime scenes is great, especially by Metro, even with our incident, the speed at which Metro was there, and JP can touch on that too, was phenomenal. So it just goes to show it can be done. Now imagine having that capacity at an investigation level. It would be an absolute game changer. But in short, it's national government competency. And unfortunately, you have politicians that abuse the fact that many people in public don't know this. They abuse it, and they then say, the ANC actually released a statement, I think 2-3 weeks ago, where they said that the Western Cape government has failed, etc., etc. And I happened to sit next to the guy that released the statement last week on the plane, and he said, "Yeah, I saw you reacted to my statement." I said to him, "But you're deliberately lying. Why would you do that?" And he just laughed. So there's a deliberate attempt to mislead the people and create this perception, and it's one of the easiest ways to cause for distrust in authorities is by misleading them with something like that, especially with crime. It's such an emotive topic.
And JP, I want to also bring you in with just these two issues as well. When we say competency, what do we mean as it relates or pertains to what Ian has said? Competency is at a national government. And then also devolution. I mean, it's such a big word, and I think we need to break it down for our listeners so that we really understand when we talk devolution, what exactly does that mean?
I sometimes think the ANC think devolution is spelled DEVIL. They seem to have a completely unnatural fear of devolution. But I think it's also confusing for many people. So at the moment, what we're talking about is not controlling SAPS. Although I think we're probably at the point where a very coherent and rational argument can be made for moving control of SAPS from national government to provincial or local government. Ian is correct when he says at the hands of the ANC nationally, they have destroyed our police force and are continuing to do harm to it every month. So what we are talking about consistently and have for the past 12, 13 years written to national ministers about through the city, through the provincial government, through the Institute for Municipal Public Safety, through SALGA, through a whole variety of channels, is the expansion of powers. We got this right in 2018 with a limited expansion of powers for our municipal police officers and immediately started talking about more because the critical powers did not expand. And in regards to our Metro Police, for instance, we can engage in crime prevention. So the city's core constitutional competency, what does the law say we must do? What are we responsible for? Traffic enforcement and bylaw enforcement. That's our core competency. When we stop doing that, nobody else does it. If we do not do crime prevention, it's still SAPS's job. That's their core competency. They are supposed to do crime prevention, detect the crime, investigate it, work with the NPA for somebody to be charged, and then a conviction must happen. But that process now is a deeply flawed process. And the flaws affect people on the street. If I can give you a practical example before I answer the rest of your question, in Bonteheuwel, we had the death of a small baby. There were two men involved in that murder. One of those men had a firearms conviction, 2 firearm conviction arrests in 2016, I think, in 2019, or around about there, twice. And twice the state failed to make a competent or effective case, and twice that offender was able to go free. Twice he walked away from those incidents. Had he been effectively convicted, he may well not have been in a position to commit that murder. So these mistakes, these failures, aren't victimless. It's not that there's no consequence for them. There are very real and dire consequences. You have career criminals who offend over and over and who start doing so with greater impunity. If you're a gangster and you realize that there's only a 2% conviction rate out of every 50 murders, one person is going to be held accountable. There's going to be one conviction. Then the gangsters will behave like they're behaving, running around our streets openly, shooting, not worried who sees them, because they don't believe that there will be consequences. That is a tragic case. 13 murders resulted in the southern suburbs from a single gangster who was released. Also a failed conviction. He was accused of murder, managed to, the case collapsed. He was back on the street, and immediately a tit-for-tat retaliatory killing spree resulted with a further 13 victims. So these failures have very real consequences. And what we're saying is we are tired of running after people on the streets with guns. 2,369 guns we've taken off the street in just short of the last 5 years.
Sure.
We're doing about 400 to 500 guns a year now. And it is deeply painful and frustrating for our officials to be running into risk every time, confronting an armed gunman, or numerous of them, catching and getting those guns off the street, catching a person red-handed, gunshot residue on their hands, multiple witnesses in the community very often, handing that person over to SAPS and then watching that case collapse, mostly because your detectives are completely overloaded. So it's not just the boots on the street that are woefully inadequate, somewhere between a third and a half of the policing resources they should have, but your detectives are woefully inadequate in terms of the numbers and the equipment they have. By now, Ian is a subject matter expert on that issue. And the consequence is that out of every 100 firearm arrests we make, 95 of those shooters are going to go free. And what do they do after they go free? They resume the thing that they were doing before. So I'm tired of hearing that this misinformation, disinformation by political opponents who try and blame the Western Cape and the city for not doing enough. We're batting way above our out of our league, punching way above our weight range, doing more than any other local authority in this regard, both in terms of the indicators. If you measure things like unemployment, the lowest unemployment out of all of the metros, the amount of drug treatment facilities, as many as the other metros combined, on all these metrics that you can measure, we are doing more than other municipalities, and should therefore, as a consequence, if you say, well, all these other factors are responsible for these crimes, should have a lower crime rate. We don't have a lower crime rate. And the reason we don't is this complete failure of the criminal justice system to hold criminals accountable. And so when we say we want expanded powers, to come back to your original question, it's to investigate. And I would add, to gather crime information or crime intelligence, because you cannot combat organized crime if your police are not equally organized and informed. So we have now reached out to Minister Kachalia, the same request we made before to Minister Mchunu, the same request we made when Regan Allen was still MEC a couple of years ago for lockdown operations, with a heavy emphasis on criminal investigations, asset forfeiture, shutting down the supply lines of guns and ammunition, failing which we're not going to change this dynamic. Us putting more and more boots on the ground to chase criminals from corner to corner won't do that. So what we want is the ability, just on those, starting just with the cases where we are the arresting officer, to go do that investigation and present to the NPA a prosecution-ready case that will stick, so we can put that person away and not watch them be back on the street a few days later doing the same killing.
Yeah, I mean, Ian, what sense do you get, I mean, as the chairperson of police in the National Assembly? I mean, we get the sense, I mean, just in this conversation, that there are truly systematic issues in SAPS. But as someone who's in a way, seeing an overall picture of what SAPS is looking like. And for many of us who engage the SAPS when we go to our local police station, the view that you have, what is actually happening?
No, so I don't want us to go for group counselling after this, but SAPS is not in good shape. SAPS is a significantly broken organisation, and the way to measure it is not by speaking to the bosses or to ministers or to senior people. Spend time on the ground. If you challenge yourself, I always try, if I see a police vehicle standing at a petrol garage or something, I stop there and I go and speak to them, or I ask, show me your vehicle, let's see how many kilometres on the vehicle, and then they start speaking, and then you realise in what crisis it is. But that being said, the fact that so many good people are hanging in there is a saving grace, because things would be much worse if it were not for them. Just to give you an idea, while you were talking about your community, Elizabeth, and JP was talking, I was just thinking to myself about issues regarding budget, for example, and that'll explain the problem. The prioritization process is also problematic. So we all know about the Madlanga Commission now and the political killing task team that's been in the media. Now, they get about 50 million rand a year for the political killing task team, but the anti-gang unit gets 7 million rand a year. If they even get that money. So there's a, and I'm not saying, attention shouldn't be given through a task team. They can go debate their own merit. But surely if you have a crisis like this, where, again, I use the Kraaifontein example, we have 14 people killed in a week, it shows you that we have a significant crisis. And look, if gangsters want to hurt each other, they can go do their thing. My problem is they're exposing so many good and innocent people to that. It's not normal for all these good people to constantly be exposed to this violence. And then to give you an idea of SAP's performance, JP was speaking about the low conviction rates. The detection rates, solved detected cases, hardly 9 out of 10 are solved. So in other words, a total of 9 out of 10 murder cases are not solved. That's the crux of it. So you have a very, very small chance of seeing a murder case actually be resolved. JP was speaking about gunshot residue. To give you an idea, part of Cape Town, for example, you've got LCRC, which is the Criminal Record Centre, and one part of LCRC has to cover 27 police stations, but they usually only have 2 vehicles, 4 members max on a shift. It's physically impossible. So that gives you an idea. Now imagine if you go and look at what they've built at the city of Cape Town, and you see a city that will be able to do ballistics, or be able to do, even if it's just as a start, forensic processing for firearm-related offences. It's a game changer. It will immediately be a force multiplier of note. And then the last 2 or 3 things regarding, just to add on top of the asset forfeiture unit, the integrated approach is something that's very broken in SAPS. SAPS seems to have this idea that they need to centralize power. They need to have complete control. And if that mindset doesn't change, it's very, very difficult to really see a different path for the future. So they should, for example, have SARS play a bigger role. To target certain gang kingpins, for example. And then just, I guess it's tongue-in-cheek, but the previous head of the Hawks, General Labia, he's retired a month or 3 ago. But I saw an article last week of his graduation gown that he used Hawks money for. They spent 50,000 rand to make him a gown and embroider gold stars on it, and it's a whole story. But now I go to Neighbourhood Watch, and they struggle to get support from SAPS or communication, for example. Imagine a radio structure that you could have built for comms between SAPS and a Neighbourhood Watch locally. Many, many examples. I know you've given radios to the wits end, but that gives you an idea. So we'll get to the solutions later, but it is significantly broken at the moment.
And there's also the aspect of confidence. South Africans having confidence in the police system. And I think, my friends and I often joke around, in a bride to say, well, if you lose your phone or your car gets stolen, you're hardly going to try and say, okay, let me go to the police with the idea that you're going to get it back. But Elizabeth, I wanted to bring you in just on the confidence aspect, the confidence that South Africans have in the police service, and just some of your experiences. I mean, as a neighborhood watch, at times we're seeing across our country that South Africans are placing their trust in private security, placing their trust in neighborhood watches, because the confidence is simply starting to disappear for SAPS. But can you just share maybe some of your experiences in terms of the relationship with SAPS?
At the moment, we have a very good relationship with SAPS through our sector commander, that, like I recently told you. And where law enforcement is very, very on hand where our neighborhood watches is concerned. They patrol with us. They do where we stand for smash and grab, and because we have a record that when we start patrolling, we book on an OB number, and that OB number secure you on the road. Anything happen, you can just pick up the phone and then phone your sector commander to say, and vans will be the 20 as soon as possible. And for me, the lack of police is that for us as neighborhood watchers that's doing patrol, they need to escort us. But it's very seldom that we get escort from them. And we don't have weapons. We just walk with a reflector jacket and a torch. And for us, it is to go into danger areas, because some areas is very dangerous to go in. Then SAPS needs to tell us that we cannot go into that specific area, because that is like the called red zone. But we don't have that close communication with SAPS. Somehow it just disappeared. In the beginning we had hands on, but slowly but surely it's just disappearing. But now law enforcement is, when we pick up a phone and phone our councillor, say, straight our councillor, Angus McKenzie, we have a direct communication with him also. We phone him and then we said, listen here, we have the situation, that situation. So he is actually a very big help for us as neighbourhood watchers in our community. He is on hand 24/7. When you need him, he's there.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people sort of have a difficulty between the differences between law enforcement and SAPS. And I'm not sure if we can explain that binary to a certain extent, because they are different.
Every municipality in South Africa will have some kind of municipal peace officer. They get called public safety in some parts of the country. The further south you go, the more frequently they're referred to as law enforcement. That label has now more or less become common. And they are empowered in terms of the Criminal Procedures Act. In 2018, we got the minister to expand the sections of the Act that apply to them, and they were able to do a lot more. And as a consequence, we were able to create LEAP with our law enforcement staff, 1,300 extra officers, largely paid for by province, also some by the city, which work in the 13 worst police precincts in the city in terms of crime. And they've had an impact over time. Traffic is another local government competency. They're empowered by the National Land Transportation Act, and for most of the work they do by the National Road Traffic Act. Also by traffic bylaws, if they have such a thing. City of Cape Town was the first city to write a traffic bylaw, and many others have now copied it. This morning, Councillor Ngavashe did a press conference where he talked about the amendments now to our traffic bylaw that's coming in the next iteration. Those are your core competencies, the enforcement of your municipal bylaws and the enforcement of traffic regulations. If local government ceases to do those do not get done by somebody else. Nobody else is going to step forward and suddenly start doing it. Not private security, not SAPS, not anybody else. Neighbourhood watchers are a tremendous help for us. In Cape Town, we are extensively partnered with us. I think we give about 8-9 million rands worth of equipment from my directorate's budget every year. Jackets, torches, bicycles, whistles, boots, all manner of equipment, body cams, occasionally drones, bulletproof vests even, and then also the ward allocations from ward allocation budgets. I'm going to such a handover straight after this in Athlone. So we do a lot of partnership building. They are a valuable partner to us. We've recently issued an app which allows them to feed directly into us. So Elizabeth and them will be able to, on that app, call for panic or call for assistance directly, which helps, which will make things a lot safer and easier for them. SAPS's job is crime prevention in terms of the Police Act, and this is where Metro Police and SAPS overlap, where Metro Police has the first two responsibilities, which the Act says they may not prejudice. They may not do crime prevention to the point that it prejudices their primary responsibility. The Act explicitly says that, but they also have a crime prevention role. What's happened over time is that as SAPS's resources have atrophied, as they've gotten fewer and fewer boots on the ground, and as the capabilities within SAPS have retreated, so local authorities have had to step up. Whether it's LEAP by the provincial government, in Gauteng government, the Amapanyana, which is a variation of that without the peace officer powers, whether it is the local authorities all gradually employing more boots on the ground, there is a recognition by everybody that SAPS is in a state of retreat and that we all have to step up. Now, around 2/3 of what the city does every day is crime prevention. So us effectively stepping in and trying to supplement where national government is absent.
So I want to put it like this, particularly for our listeners as well. You're saying Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis, Premier Ellen Wendy, are not the individuals that basically tell SAPS what to do or give them instructions in the province. Is that what you're saying? Because I think so many people get confused with this, because when we get the stats and we look at the stats in Gauteng and we look at the stats in the Western Cape and that, we sort of say, well, the Premier is responsible for that. I mean, there's been so many deaths in his province, or so many murders in his province, so many robberies in his province. What is the Premier doing? Clearly, by these numbers, the Premier has failed. Clearly, by these numbers, the Mayor has failed. So I just want to really just bring it down to the most basic format. Is that wrong to say that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
SAPS answers to the National Minister and the National Commissioner only. Your provincial minister and your premier have an oversight power. So they may ask questions, they may interrogate why things are going wrong, but that's it. That's all they can do, nothing more. The city has responsibility for its resources, but that cannot ever supplement the failure of the National Police. Nothing we do will replace that big missing vacuum that is being left by the lack of resources and capabilities within SAPS. And our political opponents, for many of them, the only value they add to the entire crime debate is this constant stream of disinformation trying to suggest that somehow the city and the province is responsible for a thing we do not control, because of course it serves their political ends.
Yeah.
God help us if any of them come into power, because I cannot imagine the further miscarriage of justice that will be inflicted on these municipal resources if some of these incredibly toxic individuals and incapable individuals ever have to ascend to the point where they control our Metro Police or our law enforcement. Unfortunately, I think the residents of Cape Town are sensible enough not to let that happen.
Yeah, Ian, I mean, it's so much misconceptions, right? And I think it's so easy to believe when you see something like that on the news and be like, well, actually the DA is not that great.
No, I mean, so I started laughing. I was smiling because when JP said they're part of the debate, I thought that many of these deployments, catered deployments, become so involved in the actual crime, they give us a crime debate. But to also give you an idea, if you go measure competency, if you spend a night with, and I think Elizabeth will be able to probably share a story or two about it as well. If you spend a night with, say, for example, Metro Police in Cape Town, you spend a night with SAPS members. Often on both sides, you'll see, first of all, they are professional people. Second of all, you'll see that they cooperate with each other very, very well in most cases. But the interesting thing is, on the metro side, you have this crisp, clean kind of a feeling. Things are functioning well. There's solid communication. People are proud of the uniform. They're excited to go and work. And often the SAPS people just don't feel that way. And not because they're not interested. It's just that over time it has dulled down to that point. So I think it's very, very important that we continue to do what we can to motivate them. But we can't just focus on that. We have to continue building alternatives. And two additional parts that's absolutely critical is to support neighbourhood watches. Work of neighbourhood watches is it's priceless. The work neighbourhood watches do to stabilise dangerous areas absolutely priceless. And the second thing is to build alternative law enforcement capacity, and that we need to essentially fill the vacuum to the point where it can't be denied.
Do you think there's a sense of perhaps sabotage?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a deliberate understaffing and under-resourcing of the police, especially in the Western Cape. We've said it for many, many years. At the moment, Nicholas Gotzel from the NCOP of the DA in Parliament wrote that parliamentary question a few weeks ago. He received the answer last week, and it indicated that there were 57 members of South African Police Service that were all sanctioned for dismissal after disciplinaries. They were charged, amongst other things, murder, robbery, assault, GBH, rape, fraud, corruption, a whole list of things. And 57 of them, their sanctions were overturned by the provincial commissioner or other senior officers, where they were then rather given 1 month of unpaid suspension, or they were given, 2 months suspension, something like that. But the point is they're back at the police. I mean, to this very moment, as we're sitting here, there's a detective at Ballard SAPS that was caught literally weighing and packaging drugs for the gangs. He's back. He's a gang detective. There's a member that was working court duty here in Cape Town. He was caught with a massive amount of drugs, and I can't remember the firearms as well, at his house. He's back at work. I think there's a sense of sabotage sometimes. The perception when SAPS communicates to the media is often created, no, we're doing what we can, but you're not. And it's not me saying so, it's your own members telling me that they're not getting the support that they need. Last example, if you go to Drakenstein or in the Winelands, you've got a district commander there who is a major general, has only been in the police for about 14 years, didn't come in as a career officer, little or no training, failed many of the different courses that she was meant to do, but she's a major general. And before that, she worked as a district commander in the Overberg district, and you can imagine the crisis with abalone poaching, etc. But you have those types of appointments. And I'm sorry, you don't see that in Metro Police or local law enforcement. You just don't. You see competent people. You don't see people being appointed at that level. And if that doesn't change, it's going to be very difficult again to turn the ship. The last thing that I must mention is you may have seen the book, The Shadow State, about the story of Babita Diukaran, who flagged, she was the CFO for the Department of Health in Gauteng. And I mean, she flagged over 800 million rands worth of dodgy payments. And I think it was over 4 years late, it is now over 4 years later. And a lot of the digital evidence to this day has not been analysed. Eventually, the media managed to get access to analyse that. Again, if the excuse was capacity, why not, in that case, it's not in this province, but why not devolve or decentralise to capable local and provincial government? You'd have immediate force multiplier. But in that case, I obviously think there were other things at play.
JP, why do you think, as Ian has made the point, that there's an element of sabotage, specifically in Western Cape? I mean, do you think that, what's your view on that?
I think the sustained level of lower resourcing in this province and other provinces certainly makes me feel that can't be accidental, that happens year after year, that there is a decision somewhere, whether by a political office bearer interfering with operational activities or by somebody with a political lens sitting in operations, that some areas can do with less resources. Whether they believe that it is their response to crime, they think crime in Gauteng is worse, and so therefore they give the Western Cape less, or whether it is to create a poor reflection on Western Cape government, that I can't answer for you. I don't know what goes on in their heads, but it does really feel that often the decisions that are taken are not about them being in the interest of the public. When the Muslim Judicial Council summoned us all to their offices, and the National Commissioner, the National Minister, the Premier, Mayor, myself, Provincial Commissioner, a lot of people were there, we took the gap to call on SAPS to cooperate on the issue of kidnapping for ransom. A lot of Muslim businessmen at that time, they was being kidnapped for ransom, and a collaboration between the city and SAPS took place there. You can go back to the press statements that were issued at the time by the Provincial Commissioner, and you'll see the acknowledgement of the city's role. In terms of technology, in terms of investigations, we support it. We have an active collaboration, and it worked. You're not hearing about kidnapping cases in the Western Cape and in Cape Town at the moment. Whereas in KZN and Gauteng, these are constant stories. Yeah. So it was then logical and obvious for us to immediately go to SAPS and say, well, let's sustain this on extortion. This is the thing where even the city's own operations are seriously at risk. We've now just launched another 250 officers in the escort services that are going out every day supporting crews in roads department, electricity, water and sanitation, human settlement, solid waste, to be able to do their work. Because in certain, the term that Elizabeth used earlier, in certain red zones, those staff can't work without a police escort. It's an insane situation, but if you are not getting convictions, you have to constantly securitize everything to unsustainable and unaffordable levels. So we said, look, extortion is a massive crisis. It's a crisis for small businesses. It's a crisis for township businesses. Myself and the mayor met with some township entrepreneurs in Khayelitsha last week, and this was obviously a topic of conversation. It's something that affects them and prevents business from growing as it should. And it is prevalent in the public transport sector. It's prevalent in the construction business, when you have construction company staff saying to you, oh, they got calls from gang bosses out of prison. So there's clearly a major problem. There, SAPS have not let us collaborate, despite taking multiple legal opinions to them, indicating that we are unable to assist. They have kept us at arm's length on this matter, even though there is a massive crisis. When that happens, I feel that there are decisions being taken that's not in the public interest, that are essentially political in nature.
Well, one of those things that have been so interesting about the city of Cape Town is the emergency response centers. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
We've invested a lot of money in our emergency response capability. We do try and benchmark ourselves on what happens in the rest of the world. So we see how is a police service set up to ensure that when you call our version of 911, which in Cape Town is 107, or from a cell phone 0 to 1480-7700, there's a call taker that is starting to capture your information on a system. We call it EPIC, the Emergency Police Incident Command System. That shows up on the screen in front of the dispatcher. The dispatcher can see where all of our resources are, all of the vehicles, they're all tracked. Staff have handheld devices. We can see where all those vehicles are moving around, and we can then dispatch one of those resources and connect them to that service request, based, of course, on priority 1 or 2, threat to life or property, down to your nuisance calls. And that process is called computer-aided dispatch. It's an absolute basic essential of any modern police or emergency service. Even the company delivering food to you at night, whether it's Uber Eats or some package company, they're using these integrated spatially enabled response management systems, a basic tool of modern business. SAPS do not have the luxury of that. And that's insane that your National Police Service is expected to do without that. Now, that's the backbone of your control room. Knowing where your resources are, being accountable for what they're doing, utilizing them effectively, making sure everybody's pulling their weight and is being productive, being able to supply business intelligence to the decision makers of this, and gathering information and data and intelligence out of that. So this is an investment that we have worked hard. I think we're probably furthest along the road of any local authority in the country. We've had a lot of other municipalities who have come. I think we've counted 43 delegations in the last 3 years. We're quite proud of that. In fact, a couple of days ago, one of them texted me and said, I just want to say to you, further to the state president's comments, and this is an ANC councillor, further to the state president's comments, we did benefit massively from you. We did go to you and we learned from you. And here are 6 things we're now doing as a consequence of engaging with you that is helping us. So thank you. So we have tried to exhibit best practice also in the other forms of technologies we employ, be they drones, eye in the sky, body cams, dash cams, CCTV, the automated number plate recognition in the CCTV and in our dash cams, so that we strive to be as competent as a modern police service. And in fact, nothing stops SAPS from doing this. Further to which, nothing stops SAPS from, in fact, investing in CCTV and all these other technologies. Nowhere in any law, and Ian will confirm this, does anything say that local authorities are responsible for putting up CCTV cameras.
Yeah.
A favorite hobby horse of ANC politicians in public meetings is saying the city must put up more cameras. No, it is as much the responsibility of national government to invest in these technologies, which they have failed to do.
And you know, JP, that's incredible, because I don't think that's happening in the country, in some of our municipalities across this country. I mean, it's something that's so exciting, kind of gives you a CSI type of, that type of excitement. And I think what's also interesting is the mentioning of CCTV. And, can you just share a little bit more about that? Because I think there's huge potential. And obviously, in terms of looking at law enforcement, how CCTV can actually work in trying to protect South Africans and I guess as evidence.
Our CCTV is evolving all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, there were years ago when our camera network was starting to expand well, but that did not translate into effective detections. We worked hard on getting the detections right. So we started detecting more, but connecting the detection to the resource, be it a neighbourhood watch, be it a private security company in the Cape Town City Centre Improvement District, be it SAPS or Metro Police or traffic or law enforcement. That was harder. And so we've gotten to the point now where that is really starting to hum. And so much so that in this last year we had 948 arrests from our camera network, and that is getting better every year. It is climbing in leaps and bounds year on year as we get better and better at this. Our camera network grows by about 50 or more cameras every year. Sometimes in a year we had a 50 million rand budget. It's a big leap in cameras. The ward councillors are adding ward allocation budgets, because every ward councillor in Cape Town has a R1 million ward allocation budget, and many of them invest in cameras. The CCTV cameras in Langa, in the ward I'm allocated to, is busy from the ward allocation budget, is busy being installed. We'll launch that in a few weeks. We spoke about it at the ward committee last night. So these are technologies that we're really mainstreaming. They're becoming part of our DNA. The same with drones. I can show you lots of drone footage that we're using on the N2 and the R300 to catch people hiding on the side, trying to ambush vehicles. So we're using these technologies more, and we give SAPS access to them as well. We share them with other stakeholders. So I think that's an important part of modernizing your police force, getting it right, is making investments in these technologies. And national government should be setting budget aside for doing that and playing catch up with where the rest of the world is at.
Elizabeth, I want to bring you in, because I think another aspect that we really haven't touched on yet is gangsterism and how really that's affecting our communities. And I don't know if you could maybe just share, just from your perspective in the Neighbourhood Watch, in terms of that collaboration between yourself and SAPS and sort of encountering that aspect.
Gangsterism in our area in Bonteheuwel, it is not that major at this moment, because for us as Neighbourhood Watch that is on patrol each night, being visible, they are just now in Adine you will hear out of 2 weeks there was a gunshot, but with our as Neighbourhood Watches in Bonteheuwel, visibility is the biggest advantage for us. So where the community is concerned, they always give us hands up. We have a WhatsApp group that we open up in all the areas. They call it the A block, the B block, and that is where we communicate with each other. If illegal activities happen there, we will mostly that people that's coming from work. We put it onto the groups and say, listen, you don't take this road, take that road. So our communication with SAPS and the gangsterism, it is so right.
And maybe, Ian, just to bring you in from your perspective, I mean, I think as a young person, at times the interface between, starting in crime is at that level of joining a gang and being involved in different things. But just from a national perspective, I mean, what is actually happening and what is being done about gangsterism?
Yeah, so I'll speak about the consequences or the lack thereof now, but to give you an idea of numbers, Mark Shaw wrote the book Give Us More Guns a few years ago, and at that stage research showed that around the broader Mitchells Plain there were over 130,000 people affiliated with gangs, and at the beginning it sounded like an astronomical number to me, but if you really go and spend time and speak to people, you'll see how close to home it is to people, even though they themselves aren't necessarily involved. Unfortunately, it really has spread a lot. Something that feels to me like it's increasing even more, even though it's been a problem a very long time, is that young boys are very easily intimidated and then forced to go in. And an example is sometimes made of them. If they say no, they get killed, or bad things are done to them. So it's the same as what we see in the southern parts of Johannesburg at the moment with regards to gang violence. It's quite similar in parts of KZN. Definitely the same in the Eastern Cape. Nelson Mandela Bay has become very, very well renowned for this. So, yeah, I think there's also a perception, and for a long time it was relatively accurate, that it's mostly men. But there are increasing amounts of women also getting involved in the gangs, and I think that was underestimated for a very, very long time. So they also do part of that work. In terms of the consequences, JP touched on it earlier. Little or no real consequence to stay away as a deterrent, and I think very often when you're already struggling with life. And as a young person especially, you see someone now is wearing a certain kind of clothing, or is suddenly able to drive a car, or you can see in terms of their appearance that they are getting more than what they previously did. I think it becomes a bit more of a call it a false positive value proposition to someone, and I can understand then, especially if you can't put food on the table, that it could become an easy way out. And remember, you've got historical spatial design issues that play a significant role in all of this. That being said, something that I feel is always important to mention is that very, very often the very people that would complain about the police, when the police do something, they attack them at that point, or they hide the young people that are involved with the gangs. So it becomes very frustrating then, because when you have good members from the police, or whether it's police, law enforcement, regardless, it does make their job very, very difficult. In terms of what's being done from a SAPS point of view, there is no strategy at the moment. I can tell you honestly, the minister admitted it in Mitchells Plain just over a week ago, where he said there is no real strategy. The Provincial Commissioner in the Western Cape has said time and time again there is a strategy. We called him out on it several times and said, let us see it. He never showed us, and now his own minister said there is no strategy. So they've said that they would draw up some kind of a stabilization plan. They've now deployed all of these extra members, but all of those very members would tell you that they have no plan. They are feeling frustrated because they feel like they're just standing in the way. So to be blatantly honest, there is no plan at the moment.
You know, and as I'm listening to you, I mean, I'm just thinking as South Africans who, you know, are just concerned for their kids, their families, what's going to happen tomorrow. How do we win this, JP? What are some of the things that can be done to start pulling back against this, you know, where we are going as a country? What are some of the steps that we are looking at?
No pressure.
For me, it's an easy one to answer. Convictions. Shamala Batoye has on one or two occasions said that the failure of policing in South Africa is the failure to achieve convictions. I agree with that 100%. I have over many years watched us try many different strategies. I actually appreciate that Kachalia had the decency to say he doesn't see a plan. That's maybe, it depends on what you call a plan. SAPS have a strategy. Is that strategy working at the moment? There's sort of small lockdowns. We give them over 200 officers every day. We're putting out our Leap Reaction Unit, over 200 officers from the city side to support them, our Tactical Response Unit, the K9 Unit, a lot of resources, a Gang and Drug Task Team. A lot of resources are now in these gang hotspots, chasing up and down, arresting gangsters with guns, which we know the convictions of will fail the bulk of the time. That strategy will not work. We tried it to death. It will not work. It will not have long-term meaningful consequences. Sadly, nor will deploying the military. The military might bring short-term relief as long as the military members are standing there. You may have a cessation of violence. And so even though I don't believe it's the right intervention, I'm definitely not going to argue against a community that says, dude, everything else is failing. Give us some relief. Absolutely, let's bring in the military. It's not the right thing to do. We do not want military in our communities. It's not how you create an effective civil police service. But in the absence of other things working at the moment and in the presence of bullets flying, how dare you say no to anybody proposing it? So the state president must apply his mind and they must do what is necessary. What is going to change that is convictions. Convictions require effective investigation. So low-hanging fruit start by significantly increasing the number of detectives, training up your detectives. I saw a stat that said about 15% of the detectives in SAPS have a level of training that will meaningfully allow them to do their job. A lot of people have a very short detective course that is not going to give them the experience and capabilities of doing what they need to. Don't have the equipment to go with it. So training, equipment, and significant additional detectives. That's a massive weak spot, and it is seldom in the public eye. The public focus on the thing they see in front of them, which is the boots on the ground. But you have to look around the corner on the rest of the conveyor belt of that criminal justice system to see that even those arrests we're getting are failing. Crime intelligence is another massive thing. We will not beat this game. We will not win this war if we are going to be constantly a step behind the criminals. You can only get ahead of them if you have effective intelligence. There is no effective intelligence at the moment. I used to say this a decade ago and draw the ire of many. Now it is commonly repeated by a lot of criminologists, by police ministers themselves. I've heard Mkhunu say it, and I've heard Kachalia say it in the last weeks. So even when we met with Kachalia, it was clear to me that he appreciated the massive scope of the crisis, but that he wasn't so arrogant as to glibly throw something in and say, I believe this is the answer. When we did say to him what needed to happen was maybe large, sustained lockdowns in communities where we block off the flow of new guns and drugs into that community and where we do effective investigations with the emphasis on investigative actions, start seizing the assets of these criminals, cut off their pipeline of drugs and ammunition, and destroy their criminal economy. That's what needs to happen. That's not a quick fix. It's a sustained fix, and it requires additional resources. We said from our side we would add such members of our investigative and information management services as we have. And I think that will make a start. But national government can't put a plaster on this. There is a substantial policing investigation or investment that is going to be required to fix this. And don't say whole of society, because you cannot get businesses to create more jobs. You cannot get sports programs to keep kids busy if the bullets are flying. You cannot do any of these things to normalize until you've stabilized. So we do have to have the short-term stabilization in order to even run any of those other things meaningfully. And so I think that there is a lot of blame for the state of SAPS has to be accepted by national government. There is obviously a refusal to accept it, a constant attempt to shift blame, even by their own ANC colleagues who sustain misinformation campaigns. And until they're honest about it, they probably won't fix it. I am hopeful that the acting minister will start making the right steps. And he must know that we are loyal to the country, we are loyal to South Africa. We're patriots. We want this to succeed. If SAPS succeeds, we succeed. It's not us versus them. So whatever we can do to assist SAPS, we do. Last week, the mayor gave SAPS another one of our facilities. That's the 5th facility or property now in the last couple of years, because they've not been able to resolve these facility problems themselves. We take the overflow calls at our call center when 10111 is struggling. We help them in every way we can, and we will continue to do so. Not in our interest or in SAPS's interest, but in the interest of the public who depend on us to succeed and to work together.
That's incredible. And I think, just to sit around this table with people who are constantly on a daily basis doing this fight, fighting this fight. I mean, for many South Africans who are watching this particular podcast and fearful and scared, I think just looking at the people who are on the table in this conversation, in this fight, is something that is incredible to see at various levels, in neighborhood watches in the city of Cape Town. And city of Cape Town is very blessed, JP, to have someone who's so knowledgeable about these issues. And of course, Ian, a chairperson who's always on the ground, always dealing with these issues, visiting police stations. But before I let you guys go, I would really like to perhaps hear some parting shots from each of you. And I want to maybe put this to both you, JP and Ian, just to, in your parting shot, speak to us a little bit about this decentralization that we've been speaking about, and what is the roadmap looking like? Because, of course, other places in the country, Johannesburg, other municipalities would love to have an emergency response center, because that seems to be working in the Western Cape, the LEAP offices. I mean, the incredible work that's happening in the city of Cape Town. How do we look and get that in other municipalities? And what is the roadmap looking like to get us there? And I think from you, Elizabeth, what is your parting shot in terms of SAPS? How do you think, as a community leader in your community, how do we fix this and how do we get it right? And what do we do to support more neighborhoods? I mean, you were speaking quite clearly about we need more whistles, we need more, but how exactly do we really integrate the work of neighborhood watches? Because we cannot deny the importance and significance of neighborhood watches in our communities and assisting law enforcement to do their job in preventing crime. So let me start with you, Elizabeth, and then I'll leave over to the gentleman.
For us as neighborhood watchers, we as neighborhood watch needs more training. We basically, for us neighborhood watchers, to be more involved in the prevention of crime. We get basic training. We do get our broken windows. That is just the basic that we have. But we want to make ourselves visible there, 24/7. Be there where SAPS or law enforcement is. And most important for us also, we are trying to go to high schools to recruit, Gangsterism starts where children go to high school. And we want to go on to high schools, recruit most of the teenagers into neighborhood watch. Start like a youth neighborhood watch. Guide them into, because they are the future of the next generation. And for us to come in there, it's a little bit of a very difficult task, because we go to the principal and we need to engage there. But it's almost like when we do patrols with SAPS onto the schools, the guns, the knives, it's just under the boards. And for us to be on that school and monitor the situation, I think will be awesome. So we as Neighbourhood Watch, I think we need more training, more knowledgeable to guide us. That's my insight.
And I think the two gentlemen can also maybe take on those points that you've mentioned. Let me throw it to Ian, and then we end off with JP.
Yeah. So to me, the first. In terms of the double strategy, the one is trying to fix what can be fixed in SAPS. Lifestyle audits and skills audits are critical. Both of them, we finally made a resolution of Parliament at the end of 2024 that they have to do skills audits before the end of this year. I don't think it's going to happen because of all the chaos at the moment, but at least we have something to fall back on, and we'll push for that. Along with that, lifestyle audits, we need to make sure that all the rotten apples are removed. Now, Public Works recently said that they were running something like 400 concurrent lifestyle audits at a time. Why can't SAPS do the same thing? We can certainly clean up, at least if we start with the top 50 or the top 100, and just start at the top level to fix our discipline and command structure. It will definitely make an impact on the way down. Then the last two or three, the one is the SAPS amendment bill that we've been waiting for many, many, many years. We really need that because a lot of the disciplinary issues need to be resolved through that. Unfortunately, in terms of unions, there has been a lot of damage as well, especially because people weren't being honest. They were confusing themselves between being fair labor reps and defense lawyers. And that criminal defense lawyer side unfortunately got the better of them. That's why Paul Mashatili's bodyguards were basically told that they're good to go in terms of disciplinary process.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's that side. In terms of how I see it, just the basics of the devolution or decentralization process, I think it could be an absolute game changer if we could see that, for example, gang-related gun crime could be that start of it, to say here's an immediate force multiplier, you are allowed to investigate X, Y, and Z. We can carry that docket, or the city or provincial government can carry that docket to the prosecutor and drive that process, and include some of the forensics too. A lot of these things fall through because gunshot residue is not taken. The relevant ballistic testing isn't done in time, and eventually the case is thrown out because of the time elapse, amongst other things. So that's how I would see it. And I think the mind shift from SAPS should be that this isn't competition, it's the ultimate force multiplier.
JP?
I think I want to start with the point Elizabeth made. Neighbourhood Watch, we have around 50,000 Neighbourhood Watch members in Cape Town. Just a little bit less than half of those are accredited in terms of the Community Safety Act. And those we will give a whole range of equipment to. And there certainly is always room for us to do more with them. I've spoken about the app that we're busy training them on. But perhaps one of the more useful things we've done, and that's something we're ramping up now, is the auxiliary service. So we take Neighbourhood Watch members into our law enforcement reserve service. We're the only city in South Africa that has a police reserve service answering to the city. That's just over 240 members. We've got over 200 people in training at the moment. And I won't rest until we have a reserve service of 2,000 or 3,000 members. And there are many young people who then can get a foot in the door for a career in policing, get the basic skills. Those qualifications are acceptable across South Africa. And that's a form of career pathing for the Neighbourhood Watch members as well. And we're accelerating that as much as we can. Of the 810 members that we've just deployed at the graduation recently, there are many of those members who come from that Neighbourhood Watch environment who then became LEAP members or were rent-a-cops paid for by a community somewhere on a contract basis. Many of them who had a start in that environment. And now they're going to go 5 officers per ward in every ward in the city to help make their community safe. And they take with them that passion. When you recruit a Neighbourhood Watch member into the police, you have somebody who's a lot more passionate, who has demonstrated that passion. You don't still have to train them for that aptitude. We will continue to grow our numbers, to grow our staff, 2,100 members in the last 4 years, including this most recent intake. And we'll continue to grow these numbers all the time. Continue to expand our technology. We're very excited. Next year, we're doing something really bold. We've taken baby steps with our control room. But next year, the Joint Services Operations Centre should go live. That's a big step forward. Then we will have a real-time crime centre, first in local government in South Africa.
Incredible.
And that's going to be a big game changer. That means that we've built the muscle on our athlete, our officer. And now we're making a big, if you can see the control room as the brain, we're making a big investment in the brains of that operation and really surging forward. And so a lot of really good investment and technology and clever thinking is going into that control room and partnership, because we invited SAPS in, private security, neighbourhood watchers, everybody. So technology continued to expand. A big investment in training. Our training college this year trained police services from 6 municipalities. We will continue to expand that. We've made a big investment in our training college. We'll break ground on the Muizenberg Training College next year. And we're already starting to work on the next facility after that, so that we will have ample capacity to be the training facility of choice for the whole of South Africa and perhaps Southern Africa. And that's a very important investment. You will only get the quality of policing that you train for. So the better quality we can train for, the more we invest in that quality of the trainers and the facilities, the stricter and the more comprehensive that training curriculum, the better the quality of the officer that steps out the other side. I was proud that out of the 1,000 officers we took in for Project 1000, 660 of them had degrees. That's just a competitive environment in terms of unemployed youth out there, that we get a lot of graduate applications now. So that's another thing important. Command and control, upskill our command and control all the time. Make sure we've got capable people in senior jobs. Otherwise, everything else beneath them becomes problematic, and we're increasingly doing well there, including recruiting really quality people from within the South African police who apply for these jobs when we advertise them. And then partnership. We at city improvement districts, now 70 of them or more in the city. Neighbourhood watches, our Rent-A-Cop initiative. There's an increasing expansion of these partnerships with communities around safety, and those are all paying dividends.
Sure, that's incredible, and I think, JP, just this conversation alone with everybody here is just we can do something, and it's not over. There's so much work that can be done, and I think there's work that is being done in the city of Cape Town. There's work that still needs to be done in terms of legislation in Parliament, but the work can be done. It is possible to turn these things around. It is possible to get this type of prototype in the city of Cape Town into other areas and provinces into our country. But I want to say thank you very much for joining us on this very important conversation. And I think it's a conversation that is very close to many South Africans. Many of us are affected by crime. Many of us are seeing crime happening around us. And I think it's such an important conversation at this particular juncture in our country, where we are continuously seeing crime happening in some of the worst ways, really. So with that being said, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me here today, and also want to thank our listeners for watching, and remind you guys to please like and share this podcast with your friends and family, and make sure that we spread the conversation and make sure more people hear what is happening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.